I don't usually do this, but I'm going to read the very next chapter because that first chapter was only a page. The next chapter is called Garbage. For the next week, Patricia managed not to think about Lindsay and the other girl during the day because Mom took her exploring in the city while Dad went to work. And the city was amazing. So many stores and restaurants and movie theaters, parks and museums. It was overwhelming sometimes, but in an exhilarating way. But at night, the memory returned. The memory of how bad things had gone with Lindsay and the other girl. So every night, Patricia sat in front of the TV and tried to read the characters' lips. She would read the closed captions, which printed out what the characters were saying, and then study their lips. At first, it seemed that some words were easy, like Mom. The lips came together at the beginning and at the end, but then she thought she could recognize Mom. She found out that Bob looked the same, not just alike, but truly the same. And when she watched the news, she found out that Mob and Bomb looked the same too. And almost every word had problems like that. So many words looked the same. Patricia couldn't understand anything. Nothing. It didn't make sense. By Thursday night, Patricia was convinced that lip reading was hard after all. But Mom kept promising that this Sunday they'd go to a picnic for deaf people. So Patricia would find someone to play with there. It didn't matter if she wouldn't have friends in school as long as she had friends somewhere. After dinner on Friday, Mom asked Patricia to carry the garbage out to the back of the apartment building. Patricia took the rear stairs and went outside to the dumpster. Lindsay and a boy Patricia figured must be her twin brother were standing in the tiny backyard, moving their mouths at each other, looking angry. Patricia stood there and watched them. She prepared to smile as sweetly as she knew how. Lindsay held up a bald Barbie doll and waved it in front of the boy's face and moved her mouth faster. Soon she would look Patricia's way. Patricia smiled now, as wide as she could. Lindsay stamped her foot and ran inside without so much as a glance at Patricia. Patricia felt like she'd been slapped. It was much worse than if Lindsay had moved her mouth at her. No matter what Lindsay said, being ignored was much worse. She blinked back tears. The boy was looking at her. Patricia wanted to run away, but she hadn't done anything wrong. She had no right to make her feel this way. She stood her ground and looked right back at him. He came up to her and took the garbage bag from her hands and threw it into the dumpster. And then he went over to the bushes in the corner of the yard and pulled out a big green plastic garbage can, like the type Patricia had back on the farm. He pried off the lid and reached inside. Next, he ran to the faucet at the side of the building and turned it on. He kept his back to Patricia. Suddenly, he threw something at her. She caught it automatically. It was a squirt gun, and it was full. The boy held an identical squirt gun in his hand. He grinned fiendishly, squirted her, and jumped behind a garbage can. Patricia was so surprised she stood there and wiped the water from her face. The boy leaned out and squirted her in the chest. "Whoa, this is war!" Patricia scurried back, but the boy was behind the garbage can again. She saw him coming out of another round. So quickly she shot at him and squeezed herself behind the big dumpster. The boy's face appeared at the corner of the dumpster. She shot back, and worked her way along the back of the dumpster and out the other side, the two of them shooting at each other the whole time. She came around the front of the dumpster and looked around for new cover. But this yard was pathetic. There was nowhere to hide. The boy appeared at the other corner of the dumpster. He squirted but was out of water. Patricia squirted back until the gun was empty. She raised it over her head in triumph. The boy ran back to the green garbage can and leaned halfway into it. Patricia followed him and looked over his shoulder. The can was full of all kinds of balls and jump rope and baseball bats and who knew what else. Patricia wasn't really good at throwing and catching, but she could get good. If this boy wanted to play, she'd give it a try. And a breeze coming out of nowhere, it blew Patricia's hair back off her temples. She felt like she was on the farm again, in the ash tree with Nanny hanging her head against the trunk below. A sudden urge made her tap the boy on the back. He straightened up and looked at her inquisitively. Patricia grabbed the garbage can in a bear hug and picked it up and dumped everything out of it. The boy stared at her. She grinned at him, the same way he had grinned at her, and then put the garbage can on its side and motioned for him to get in. The boy looked skeptical, but crawled in the garbage can. Patricia rolled him over and over in the grass. She could feel the reverberations of his laughter in her hands. That was chapter 10. Much longer than the first one.